And welcome to episode 2 of One on One. I'm your host, Meghan Cooney. On this episode, we got a chance to talk with Jesse Cute. Jesse Cute is an esteemed alumni of LaSalle, working for Allied Global Marketing. He has done promotions from everything from Broadway shows to movies to many, many products with a bunch of popular name brands. Hi, Jesse. Thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I know that you worked for Allied Global Marketing, correct?
That is true.
So do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about what your company does, who you guys are?
Sure. I'll do my best. Allied Global Marketing is a full service global marketing agency. We have about 22 offices across North America. And in the last several years, we've expanded globally into Europe, Latin America, and now into Asia as well.
Wow. Okay.
Our services include anything that you can expect under marketing. I am in our publicity and promotion department. Also, we call that field marketing. But we do traditional advertising, digital everything, because that really touches in everything we do. Creative, multicultural marketing. I always forget something, national PR as well. So we create these like solution teams for any given client, sort of like a la carte on whatever the need may be.
Okay, great. So I know you kind of touched on, you said your specific role in the company. Could you elaborate on that a little more? What's your day-to-day like?
Every day is different. My title is Vice President of Field Marketing. So field marketing is a term that sort of came out of the origins of the companies. We were and still are regional representation for the film studios.
Okay.
So when I started, that was almost exclusively what Allied did many moons ago. And we've really diversified our client base since then. But we are the field, we're the boots on the ground for the film studios outside of New York and LA. Now, we have a number of regional clients here in Philadelphia where I'm based. And the company has also diversified into new categories. We seem to specialize in selling tickets, but that's not exclusively what we do. Our clients run the gamut from Sephora to Comcast, NBC, Universal. I mentioned the major motion picture studios, and we also put ourselves in a good spot before the pandemic to be the right hand for several streamers, such as Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and so forth, Apple TV.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. That's fantastic. There's a lot of big names in there.
Yeah. And then as far as, what I do, at my core, I'm a publicist. So I am handling publicity for the clients that we handle. I oversee our Philadelphia office, and I help to support initiatives from a management perspective across our North American offices. So we have offices in all the major cities that do the same kind of things that we do in Philadelphia. The clients may be different. And in many cases, the clients are the same. For a Warner Brothers or a Disney, for example, we handle them in several markets across the country, utilizing our regional expertise, but maybe a uniform strategy across the markets. So day to day, things can really vary. Often I come in thinking my day will be one thing, and sometimes it's something else. It keeps you on your toes, but we are in Philadelphia. There's, I think, about 10 or 11 of us. I always lose count, handling, a plethora of clients. So each of us has our own assigned clients. We generally have teams of 2 that work and support these clients. And one client might be particularly busy at the time of this taping. There's a major doll who has a movie coming out. So
yes.
Everyone in the office has been involved in sort of lifting up the team that works on that film to make sure that it's success this weekend. And then there's some great competition as well that has had some major things. At the same time, in addition to film and streaming, we also, as I mentioned, handle a lot of local clients, one of which is the Kimmel Cultural Campus, which is the Kimmel Center, the Miller Theater, the Academy of Music. We also work with the Forest Theater as well. So the agency handles their advertising, and then out of the Philadelphia office, we work with them closely on supporting their in-house publicity team, as well as promotions and events.
Wow. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. That's a whole slew of clients. That's fantastic. Do you have, I know you just talked about, like I said, a whole slew of clients. Do you have any client in particular that you really enjoy working with, or like a favorite client that you really just like enjoyed the experience with them?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I love them all. I will say I have worked with Warner Brothers Pictures since I was an intern, and I can get a little into ancient history if you're interested in that. But I began as the Warner Brothers college rep,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
which was a very long time ago. I won't even say the year. This is the first time I'm not saying the year, but I was at LaSalle at the time, so people could do the math. That internship led to a full-time position, where I, worked on the Warner Brothers team. I left Allied. So I should say Allied was my first full-time job. I left and came back, but one of the jobs in between was working at what was then the WB affiliate. So I was kind of always Warner Brothers in capacity. So that's a client I've loved. I've traveled the world to work with them. It's a wonderful team. They have a lot of great product. And then I would say, I'm fortunate that I get to work with some art house studios like Focus Features. And then I would be remiss not to mention the Kimmel Cultural Campus, because I absolutely love theater. I guess I was a Broadway guy and never knew it. And now, by way of working in PR, like starting to recognize who the actors are, what they've done previously, that kind of stuff, I never really paid attention to. I just knew a good show was a good show. And now, getting to see the careers flourish, being a part of boosting them by setting up their press and their interviews, it has been really rewarding. I never thought I would actually work day to day on the shows. And I joke, my first show, so this is my first season as the lead on the Broadway business. My first show was Annie, which seems like a good kind of show to maybe get your feet wet.
Yeah.
But in the past season with the Kimmel Cultural Campus, I've been fortunate enough to work on Six, which is about the six wives of Henry VIII. Definitely, a pop culture phenomenon. Jagged Little Pill is a personal favorite. Moulin Rouge has been a favorite, but I've also gotten to work on Come From Away, Tina, the Tina Turner musical. Getting ready for the fall new season at the Kimmel, and the first couple of shows I'll be working on are Mean Girls and Wicked.
My gosh.
So those are some pretty established and well received shows. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to get to work on those as well.
It's so funny. I was just driving in Center City the other day, and me and my friend passed by one of the theaters, and I was like, Wicked, oh my gosh, we have to go see that, because like I've been dying to see Wicked for like many months now, and I was like, oh, it's coming, like this is gonna be great. So, and
they're making a movie that's scheduled, if all things stay on schedule, should be out in 2024. So
I know,
I'm
very excited.
That's Warner Brothers, so I will have the opportunity to work on that on the film side, so that's neat.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So I know you talked about how you started out working with Warner Brothers, interning, like they've kind of been where you started. How did you get there, maybe in a sense? Like the steps did you take after LaSalle or while you were at LaSalle to get there?
So that's actually a really great story, because I think I was beginning my junior year at LaSalle. I was planning on going into television. But I was a little bit chicken about moving, which was short-sighted of me, but the world was a little different there. It felt a little bigger. You didn't feel, going to New York was like a big deal to me then. And now it's like, I'll wake up on a Saturday and hop on a train. But it was brother Jerry Molyneux, who actually called me and said, hey, I was contacted by a gentleman who represents Warner Brothers. He is looking for a college ambassador. It was paid, which we know in
paid internships or
internship. Also, this was now I'm going to tell you it was the late 90s, like and it was a couple $100 a month, and it was like unheard of. And that makes all the difference when you're in college. So he connected me with a really wonderful guy. His name is Frank Chili, and he was the publicist for Warner Brothers. Before I ever started to work for Frank, though, Warner Brothers made a change and moved the business to Allied Global Marketing, which at the time was Allied Advertising. At the time, not so great for Frank, but then by the time I had gone through, he was kind enough to pass me along to Allied, and then they called me. And we're like, we're looking for an intern. We heard that you were supposed to do this. And I was kind of like, what is an allied? What, oh, it's an agent. What is an agency? I didn't even understand. It sounded like a factory to me. I'm like, I'm going to go to this factory of like movies. What is this? And fortunately for Frank and to the benefit of Allied, he ended up coming over to Allied. So we ended up getting to work together after all. And he and others at Allied sort of became mentors. But it was Brother Jerry who got me connected. At the first couple of months there, I was like, what are these people doing? Like, I didn't understand what not really, I didn't understand what anybody was doing. I didn't understand the impact they were making. And I will say I had a wonderful supervisor who really let me fly, and sometimes you stumble when you start out. And I remember this was the era of phone calls. I want you to call this person and do this. And I would call and they would ask one question and I would be like, I have to call you back. And like, go get the answer, call them back. And then they would ask another question and be like, I don't know. I'll call you back. And then one day it sort of clicked. I sort of started to realize like, okay, this is what an agency does. It's the coming together of like-minded people share similar interests in a particular industry. And it is a little bit of a weird agency setup that, we get to work on competing product. Like every Friday, there's movies coming out that make compete with each other. And now with the streaming world and theater, you're just, we're all sort of competing because there's so much out there these days. But it was unique. I don't think you'd find an agency that has like the Coca-Cola rep in the last office on the right and the Pepsi reps across the hall. So it is unique in that way, but the strategies and everything, maybe they're coming up with those in New York and LA for those national clients I mentioned. Regionally, we have a little more control on the strategy and plan and collaboration with the local clients. So yeah, when it clicked, I really loved it. And I really quickly was like, okay, PR, publicity, events, that is something I really could get into. And I think my fear in the whole TV thing was moving. My family's in Philadelphia. Obviously I picked LaSalle to stay in Philadelphia, and I was starting to make connections at Allied, and I was like, all right, well, I was seeing people graduate and going to like, Waco, Texas or something. Nothing against Texas, is a great place, but it sounded scary to me as like a 19-year-old, so PR I sort of fell into. And I have Brother Jerry really to thank, for connecting me. I don't know that I would have ever heard of this position, if not for that. And I interned for Allied for 2 years, which is also a little bit unheard of.
Yeah.
During the summer, I was fortunate that they hired me and like put me on payroll part-time. So that I could stick around. And then in the fall, I would go back into those like studio internships that had stipends and stuff. And I was actually doing Disney and Warner Brothers at the same time because I was that into it. And then graduation day came, and this is sort of funny. A job opened up, but it was the job of receptionist. And I was like, well, I like these people. I like this company. And I took that job. And I remember sitting by this gigantic switchboard and all the calls came through that way, which, everybody has direct dial now, and announcing calls and patching them through, which is so funny. And it wasn't even 2 or 3 weeks that the agency had scored a major movie studio that they had never really worked with before, a big one, really. And it became my first client. Like, they were sort of like, I don't know who's going to do this, but I think Jesse can do it. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I quickly, I guess, rose the ranks, for lack of a better term. I wasn't the receptionist very long, but I would fill in for the next one that came along happily. Grateful that I had moved a couple cubicles back from that. So that's kind of the initial story of Allied. I eventually, once I got my feet wet there, I loved every second of Allied. One of the great things about working at Allied is you're constantly, you're figuring out ways to rally the product and connect it with the community, be it, via press outreach or promotions outreach or events and partnerships. And I had formed a fairly decent relationship with WPHL, which then was the WB affiliate. And they had a PR and events job open, and they're like, "Would any chance you'd be looking?" And I was like, "Not really. How's the money?" And and then I had actually always had a dream to work in television. I thought it would be broadcast. But I ended up, fulfilling that dream, but it was a little different. I was in the creative services department, which is the fancy way of saying promotion, and worked both PR events. And then I sort of was like a liaison to the sales department for all the added value things. They'd make a sale and they'd promise X to the client. And I would be the one who would make that happen, whether it was a on-air promotion or at the time, and you may be too young to know this, the mascot of the WB was Michigan J. Frog. It was literally a guy in a frog costume. I have stood on the corner of 16th and Chestnut ringing the Salvation Army bell, and drove around the big promotions van for a while. But also, on the PR side, was working very closely with the in-house news team, then called WB 17 News at 10, to kind of promote the newscast, get word out about that. They were, I think there was an awareness issue at the time, and they were building their credibility and building up their ratings. And I was able to get the news anchors out into the community more, and really just working hard to get the evening WB shows coverage. We would have the stars come in, and getting interviews for them as well. And that was very similar to what I was doing at Allied. So that's that WB connection. I left there for what was then the New Jersey State Aquarium, now Adventure Aquarium.
Oh, wow.
I called it my summer job, though it wasn't intended to be my summer job. I joined them. I loved every minute of working there. And then I got a call that DreamWorks was no longer working with Allied and was going to use a new agency. That agency was called Terry Hines and Associates. I got that job. DreamWorks was my first client. Wow. During that tenure, that was 8 years at Terry Hines, we were fortunate to work with Warner Brothers, New Line, CBS Films, Summit Entertainment, which was like the Twilight franchise, and,
oh my
and
gosh,
a lot of other fun movies, Lionsgate, and a handful of others. And then in 2011, I got an email. It said, "Great news, we are merging with Allied." So the company I had interned for and worked for full-time right out of college, had sort of, bought the department I was working for at Terry Hines. So it was sort of a forced homecoming. I gave consideration to all my options. But in the long run, I would say initially I wasn't really sure that I wanted to go backwards, because I was kind of seeing it as such. But in the long run, it really was a good thing. I was able to bring, the skill set I had learned at, Allied the first time, plus working at a nonprofit, which was the Aquarium and the WB. And then the agency experience at Terry Hines to come in. They hired me to lead the office, which was wonderful. A couple of years later, I was promoted to vice president. So I guess things are going well. And I think the most rewarding thing out of that story I'm telling is once the two agencies merged, all the movie business was really like under one company for the most part. And we were able to then, instead of competing against somebody else, to kind of focus on diversifying our client portfolio. And that's where things got really fun. And when we started to work, in with live theater, we've worked with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, which does the annual Philadelphia Flower Show. And I tend to talk about the local clients because they're right down the street. And
of course.
We opened Fashion District, which was the old gallery.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We were involved in that. We have worked with the Philadelphia Film Festival annually. We were working with the Environmental Film Festival, which had a short but impactful run. We've opened restaurants. So you name it, we've worked with it. So lots of cool projects.
Yes, very. What a full circle moment for you. Like, that's so incredible.
Yeah, it feels like it was like a different company. I think what's very interesting is there's a few people who I worked with the first time who were still around the second time. And I guess during the tenure where we were sort of competing agencies, I use the word frenemies. We always maintained these friendships and relationships, even though there were times where maybe they weren't thrilled that a client went our way, or maybe I wasn't thrilled a client that should have went our way went their way. But once we were all under one house, I guess we were able to realize, why are we here? We're here because we have similar passion for the same thing. And if we could all just identify or all just kind of settle on that we're here because we like the same thing, we weren't really competing against each other. We were it was a real gathering of the minds. And from there, it was great to sort of like reconfigure the team that I brought from the old agency in with a new agency to create what I feel to this day is still a very strong group of people who make it fun to go to work.
That's amazing. That's just like just like you said, like trying to come together to diversify the client base, and just even like you're all there for the same reason, like you said. So
right.
That's great. Oh my God. Like I said, what a full circle moment. It's wonderful. So going back to LaSalle a little bit, taking you back, was there anything that you participated in at LaSalle? I know you mentioned how influential Brother Jerry was in your entire journey, but any clubs, activities, any professors that you would say really helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I have to reiterate again, Brother Jerry, not only for help connecting me with the internship, but his film as art class. I guess I always liked movies, and there was an escapism there that I think now I look back and I think, from childhood, from one of the first Star Wars movies, and E.T. was when I was, relatively young, that escapism really, turned me on in the sense of like, you find who you relate to and you see yourself in them and all of that. Specific to LaSalle, that film as art class, I took what was then called the interpersonal communication track, which doesn't exist in that form anymore. I don't know if LaSalle would like me to call it. I called it like psychology junior. Kind of the study of how we communicate with each other, and what are the hand motions I'm making now mean, or the head nod, or communication nuance in some way, what those things mean. Marianne Dayton, I thought, was a great ally for me. My senior year, I took a class called The Dark Side of Relationships.
Okay.
And oh my gosh, it was so intense. And one of the parts of the course was for people to tell, maybe to interview somebody or to study someone's story. And like, I'll never forget, a good friend of mine, Chris Pinto, got up and he was talking. I don't want to mess this up, but he was talking about a relative who was getting older, and the impact that she had on his life. And his story in this presentation he's giving to the class ended with her passing. And I was the one in the class like weeping, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know if I can deal with this class. But Marianne noticed, the way I was reacting, and sort of let me embrace my feelings. And it's the teachers who kind of, you build this relationship with that's less transactional than I teach you, you write essay, you give me essay back, I judge you. I also have to mention Sid McLeod, who actually taught me in grade school at Norwood Fontbonne Academy. He unbelievable that this even existed, and that I had this fortune at Norwood to take like a TV course.
Oh my God.
So he'd come to Norwood, and then he took us to LaSalle, and we ended up like recording as grade schoolers our own TV show, and everybody got a job. I was, of course, the host of this game show that we were doing. I'm a big game show person. And it was basically a knockoff version of Win, Lose, or Draw. We called it Picture This. The tapes are still somewhere. My voice hadn't changed yet. And, somebody learned how to put the letters on the screen. And then we had a studio audience and contestants. And then I think we did 2 episodes in one day, and that was grade school. So then I was so excited when I got to LaSalle to get to work, to get to collaborate with Sid and his expertise and learn the tech stuff behind production and all of that. And then, of course, Tanya, I would say one of the most rewarding things I had or got to do was, and I sort of waited too long. I think it was just senior year. I could be wrong. was having my own TV show on LaSalle 56.
Mhm.
Not just mine, but there were 3 or 4 of us that put it together, and we did it every other week. And it ended up to be, fortunately, because I was interning at Ally at the time, a movie review show. So we would
Okay.
preview what was coming ahead and review a couple movies. And then as we got more comfortable into the second semester senior year, we started doing like these silly themed episodes.
Mhm.
I have clips somewhere. Don't find them. I remember we did like a pajama episode where
Uh-huh.
I literally carried my recliner from my dorm room down
Oh
to the studio, and like blankets, and like we were in our pajamas, and I remember reviewing, and this is dating myself, but reviewing the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap movie had just come out. So
my gosh.
talking about that among other movies. And I had a couple different co-hosts and a great team that was like putting this together. That was probably one of the most rewarding things that I recall of my
Mhm.
days at LaSalle. And it also was a real confidence booster. You know, while I still stood by not wanting to move after all of that, I knew I could have done the TV thing. I have several friends who work in TV news, who some of them love it, some of them the hours can be grueling, and you know, how many murders can you cover?
Mhm.
But I think I ended up on the right path with PR.
Yeah, for sure. What was the name of the show, if you don't mind me asking?
So the show may even still exist. The original name of the show was, oh my gosh, give me a second. Oh God.
Because I
It,
feel like it might still exist, but
so
I'm trying to see what it was called.
it was called, oh, I got it. It was called Quiet on the Set the first year and a half. And
Mhm.
then they changed the name to Backstage Pass,
Yeah. Mhm.
which still exists, I think.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. So
Yeah.
Quiet on the Set was a decent name, but I think Backstage Pass was a really good name for the long
Good
term.
name for it. Yeah. I love so Backstage Pass now it's every Monday they film and stuff
Oh
like
wow.
that. So I'm currently working with Sportsline on LaSalle TV. So I like get to interact with everyone like that. But it's funny because you mentioned the pajama episode, and I think they did one of those this year. And the 2 people that ran Backstage Pass just recently graduated, but they were phenomenal. And so I was like, oh, I feel like it's Backstage Pass, but I'm not too
Yeah,
sure.
when we started to do some themed episodes, it was when we were really starting to feel more comfortable on camera, less scripted. Like in the beginning, we were just very prompter heavy, uh,
Mhm.
and you know, I had a lot of hairstyles back then. I would try a lot of things that I am embarrassed by then, because I always had like long hair, so I could try different things. But when we got to the themed episodes, you know, we would go off script and get a little more silly with each other.
Yeah.
So
It's always fun. Like that's such a great way. Like you said, it's a great confidence boost. I love LaSalle TV. I almost feel like I kind of got involved with it maybe like a little too late. But it's just such a great way to like, I don't know, just a creative outlet and just such a great way to
yeah.
boost
I
your
mean,
confidence, like you
and
said.
better late than never. So
Yeah. So do you have anything that you wish, like you said, your journey was extremely, I don't know, you took a lot of turns. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of decisions that you made along your journey. Is there anything that you wish you had done differently? Or if you could go back and change something, is there anything that you would change?
a couple things. Well, one, I wish I had come out of my shell a little earlier, and I think that you can't really control that. I mean, maybe you can, but it really wasn't until I started interning, you know, working with adults and like um, getting to know that business atmosphere. Um, Again, coming out of your shell, letting people know a little more of you. So I kind of wish, you know, I think my freshman and sophomore year was just very, well, I was always nerdy, but I was just very reserved and kind of taking things in a little bit like nervous, you know, like I'm sure every college student felt that way, and we all react to that in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, once I was like, I was never the big man on campus, but once I was comfortable in my own skin, into junior and senior year, I allowed myself to have more opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Leaving Philadelphia, you know, it's certainly not a regret. I wouldn't use that word, but it was a decision that I made, and I ended up doing regional PR. So there's parts of me that are like, okay, well, you really got a good gig going here, but I do see myself like down the road, even if it's retirement, like I could see myself in a different climate. Yeah, I'm not a big lover of winter. But I do love Philly. I will say I love to leave. I love getting out of here. And especially when you're in the PR scene and you're really entrenched, and, you know, we've done wonderful things with the mayor's office or TV stations, radio stations. So when you're so in it, that it really makes it great to leave sometimes, but I always love coming back. I don't know. I mean, just to take more chances. And actually, I was talking to a college student who was working an event with me, and she was telling me, I think she was going into her junior year, and she was going to Europe for the summer alone. And I was like, oh my goodness, I would never have done anything like that. And unsolicited advice that I gave her was like, try to keep that global mentality going, because the world is, not to use this cliche phrase, but I'm going to do it. Like, the world is your oyster. Like, the world has become smaller, and it's not so scary. You know, I was scared to go to New York. That's absurd to me, or Texas, or whatever it may have been. But I see a lot of excitement, you know, as the world has become global, allied global marketing. Who knows, maybe one day I'll end up in our London office or something. Never to rule that stuff out, because you can still be working with North America from there. And we had a project recently, a new client, and we got on the call, and I like to look people up on LinkedIn, and she lived in Amsterdam. And I was like, oh my God, I love Amsterdam. And she basically was like, yeah, I was living, you know, in the States, and it really didn't matter where I was. She was overseeing a costumed tour, like a public television show that has a costume tour that travels around. And she's like, it didn't matter where I was. And she's like, so I'm in Amsterdam. And I was really jealous. So I don't think that's necessarily a regret, but more something that if I was in college now and somebody had told me that, I'd be like, okay, that's some good advice.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, because especially now with Zoom and everything like that, and a lot of people working remotely, that's more common, or people are like, oh, I can work anywhere, so might as well work from Amsterdam or London or Paris or something like that. And so I feel like just having the courage and the confidence to even do that is huge. Like you said, going to Europe for the summer it's a big dream of mine to travel. So I feel like that would just be absolutely phenomenal. But getting there is like a whole different story.
Yeah.
So do you have any last advice for current students who are struggling, or maybe trying to find their place or their niche kind of in the world or in the comm field?
I'll first say the thing that probably everybody says, but intern. Try different things. It's not just about figuring out if you like production or if you like PR. It's also getting a taste of different places. You might go to one place and try PR and think, oh, I don't know. And then you go to a different place and you're like, wow, okay, I see this. Like, so definitely keeping busy interning and being really smart about where you're picking your internship into your senior year, because that could be your first job.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to try different things as well. Like, I actually never interned in television, but yet I'm telling you that I had this inkling to be, in television. So try different things. But I also think a smart piece of advice is to really think about where you want to be the day you graduate, and maybe making sure that last internship is a place you can see yourself being full-time, and then putting the time in. And back to the, Zoom is wonderful and we can communicate with people all over the world. Go in the office if they invite you to go in the office, and go in as much as you can. Those are the people that, myself as a leader, when you really get to know the people, both their skill set and their temperament, those are the people that have become, our next hires. So really dive in. Remote internship is great, but I really still feel like you get a better experience when you're in person.
And that concludes this episode of One-on-One. I want to take a second to give a huge thank you and shout out to Jesse Cute for taking time out of his very busy schedule to sit down and chat with us. As always, I'm your host, Meghan Cooney, and we'll see you next time.